Tom, I've got a couple of questions for you. I mostly want to talk about Roger Stone, but we've been talking a little bit about what happened on Friday. Do you have any thoughts on the president, what he needed to do that he felt to open the government after the shutdown? Where do you think it goes in the next few weeks?
Well, the politics of a shutdown as to what happens in one circumstance is of less interest to me than the goal of getting border security.
That's right.
Finally, after decades, and that's got to be, I think, that needs to be his focus. So what happens to get that done? I think people can argue over good faith in terms of tactics, but we got to get this policy goal done because we've got this crisis on the border that is a dire threat to our nation, and so he's got to figure out a way to protect the nation in that regard. And the thing I would recommend is that he direct the military to secure the border, get the troops down there, get get the Department of Defense as the lead agency securing the border, get it secure, build the wall in the medium term to support the troops down there to make their job easier, but get the troops down there by the tens of thousands to secure the border. Because that's the sort of thing that we have a military for, which is to protect the nation from threats on the outside, and securing the border ought to be A1 in terms of priorities.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. So, Tom, let's talk a little bit about Roger Stone and his arrest. And I want to talk about what Stone is accused of. It seems like a bunch of process crimes that were not committed until the Mueller probe started. But talk briefly about the tactics, because I have to say, as an American, whether or not you're a fan of Roger Stone, and Roger Stone's been on the show a number of times, I have some mixed opinions about the guy, though he is a genuine character. But I thought the tactics of the 6 a.m. raid with the dozens of law enforcement, FBI officials, it does seem like, with CNN getting tipped off, it seems like Gestapo tactics to me, Tom. I was blown away by it.
It was an abuse, in my view, and it's a part of a pattern of abuses by the special counsel. The guns-drawn raid on Paul Manafort, the raid on the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen.
Yes. Yes.
Cohen's on the outs now with President Trump for good reason, but there should have been no raid like that, in my view.
Right.
It's extraordinary. And then, as you point out, we've got the idea that he was going to be indicted was no secret to anyone. So they didn't need a raid to arrest him. They could have had him turn himself in. And when you look at the underlying indictment, it's something, once again, we didn't need a special counsel for. And frankly, we should be looking at it with skepticism, given the other activity the special counsel and DOJ has been involved in terms of targeting and then having people plead guilty to crimes that may not actually be crimes. And we can't even trust the underlying indictment, in my view, given, for instance, what happened to General Flynn.
Yeah, this is a great point, and I think General Flynn is an amazing story because I think he really has gotten railroaded more than anyone in this case. But Roger Stone talking about how he had to liquidate all these savings accounts, even for things for his grandkids, and I don't know how much of that's true. I don't have any reason not to believe Roger Stone on this stuff. But that, to me, seems to be the tactic here, is just punishing people who are associated with the president. It seems like this is no longer about proving Russian collusion, or it is about trying to make people's lives miserable because they're associated with Donald Trump. And I just don't see anything that they're proving that is protecting the American public. All I see is people who are trying to make your lives a living hell if you supported Trump.
Well, I'm not quite sure what they've proven either, even in the indictment. Remember, you're reading only one part of the story there.
Sure.
My guess is a competent defense lawyer is going to make mincemeat out of the charges about lying to Congress, obstructing justice, and intimidating the witness. And it doesn't necessarily follow that any of those crimes took place, even looking at the four corners of the indictment. So we'll see how that turns out. But as you point out, there's a lot of pressure on a defendant here and it wouldn't surprise me if Mr. Stone pled guilty to something and ended up further cooperating with the special counsel. And then in 6-8 months, we hear from the special counsel that Roger Stone wasn't giving him the goods on the implication is Roger Stone isn't giving him the goods on President Trump, and then they accuse Roger Stone of lying again. I mean, this is I think going to go on through the rest of the presidency of President Trump, and I don't mean just his first term. I think it's the second term.
Yeah. As long as he's president, this will continue, and then when he stops being president, if he's no longer perceived as a threat, then all of a sudden people will move on. I mean, that's how it's going to be. But this is, at a minimum, a huge time suck and a big intimidator, because it does make you feel like, if you're sort of on the periphery of Trump world, as we are at Breitbart, where we're not directly in it, but we're kind of on the periphery, it does make you feel like you don't want a part of it. That's part of what they want. They want that feeling that, like, well, who would want to touch this stuff? Who would want to go near this guy when everything around him's toxic? This is a strategy. I know that's my opinion, but it is a strategy. Tom, you said something so interesting there about the guilty pleas, which now we are at this point where the pleading down and making pleas in order to avoid further financial strain or time this is, I think, becoming more commonplace throughout our judicial system, our legal system, and in particular in the case of the special counsel, when you know you're going up against a entity loaded with killers who are on the prosecution side or on the investigation side. It feels like prosecution side, and they have essentially infinite resources financially, then you just want to get out of it. You just want to take whatever deal you can get and get out, and that does compromise the integrity of it. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Well, you face financial ruin in terms of any defense against charges, and then if you lose, there's a reason the stat is 95% of plus federal cases plead out, because you go to trial, you're going to lose, or that's the thinking generally, and losing puts you at risk for years and years in prison, as Paul Manafort found out in Virginia.
Sure.
So in his Virginia case, which he went to trial on and lost in significant ways on, so that you're gonna try to figure out a way out, and the question is, as Judge Ellis said, are these guys being prosecuted for the crimes in the public interest, and that's the issue, or are they part of the piece here? And Roger Stone, but for his relationship with President Trump, would never have been the subject of this sort of Justice Department inquiry. Frankly, it was beneath them to begin even asking these questions about arguing over whether he told Congress what he told Congress, given the fact, according to other reports that's been released in terms of his testimony, because we still don't have his testimony, that he was cooperative on the key issues. It's just something that, of course, we can't ask questions about, because no one's really adequately supervising the Mueller investigation. And God forbid if Matt Whitaker did anything, because he'd be run out of town, because
right.
Mueller is running the show here in Washington, D.C. He's running the Justice Department. He's got all of Congress cowed, both Republicans and Democrats. Few are asking any questions. None want to bring him in before Congress and question him about his hires and his forthrightness with the American people in terms of telling them about the bias and covering that up within his own team. But when you look at the indictment, though, I would look at it in a. Of course, the media is not going to point this out. Is that it's pretty clear the Trump team had no idea about WikiLeaks. They were not involved in it. They couldn't communicate with them directly. They're just throwing out feelers the way everyone else in Washington was once they understood that they had Democrat emails and maybe Hillary Clinton's emails. But it's pretty clear they weren't coordinating in any sense of the term, and certainly didn't coordinate to steal any emails, which is the basis of the special counsel appointment in many ways. So it's a key part of the fake Russia collusion story. It's again been blown out of the water by Mueller himself. But of course, Mueller is out there to get Trump, so he's not going to say this out loud. But he can't avoid these truths coming out as people look at the indictment material. Again, another indictment, and not one piece of evidence that any American knowingly colluded with the Russians to try to steal the elections.
So what is it specifically, Tom? Did I get anything wrong? What is there anything? What specifically was Stone? And again, I had to react to this while it was breaking on the show last week. But my initial read was they're accusing him of all crimes that were committed after the probe got started, not anything that even comes close to indicating he was a liaison between the Russian government and the Trump administration to rig an election. It was more that he had been less than truthful or during the probe itself. What specifically is he being accused of?
He's accused of lying to Congress and not admitting to certain communications with third parties, not WikiLeaks, with intermediaries about WikiLeaks and having documents about it. You know, to say it suggests that, my gosh, why wasn't DOJ brought in to take a look at this as opposed to having a special counsel? The Justice Department couldn't have done this in the ordinary course. A U.S. attorney couldn't have looked at this issue in the ordinary course. Of course not. In this age of government shutdowns and everything, and the Justice Department and courts are going to close absent federal money in a fight like this. Americans should know that was never going to happen with the Mueller investigation, and that's what they've been spending their money on. This hyper-focus on individuals close to President Trump and doing everything they can, in my view, to try to come up with crimes that they can't get out of, that no other prosecutor would have pursued.
Okay, so is there any possibility that some of the focus on Jerome Corsi, who has been a figure in right-wing media for a very long time, but and no disrespect to Mr. Corsi, who I don't know well at all, but he's not a power player in Washington, not even close. And it makes me think when you're focusing on guys like Jerome Corsi, you're focusing on guys like Roger Stone, who has been a player. He's a smart guy. He's a network guy. But there's something to me feels like perhaps they want us to focus, the Mueller probe wants people to focus on this for some reason. And maybe there's something else going on. Is there any chance that this is all designed to be some sort of a elaborate distraction?
Look, Corsi may seem a tertiary figure, and Corsi would admit he doesn't know Trump too well. I think he may have talked with him a few times several years ago.
Yeah.
But when you're pursuing a conspiracy theory that's unhinged,
sure,
like the set up by the dossier and other things like that, Corsi becomes a key figure. Stone becomes a key figure because these are the ways they colluded with the WikiLeaks people and thereby the Russians, and it's all part of think of the giant chart with all the strings going back and forth. In the crazy person's room, you see on TV and movies about people pursuing allegations of conspiracies. We've got the conspiracy nut jobs are the basis of the special counsel investigation, and it's all designed to get Trump. And a normal prosecutor would have said, I'm not doing this, but when you're out to overthrow the president, all bets are off.
Yeah, Tom Fitton.
And now we're going to see the Democrats pursue it at the impeachment level. It's what an abuse of power. What an abuse of power. Both legislatively through impeachment and the DOJ prosecution team.
Yeah, and that to me is the most striking, is they're so far afield from Russian collusion, which is what this was all about. And for the good of the country, it's time to just say we didn't find it or show what they got and move on. I just don't. Tom, I'm just so discouraged because, and I played audio earlier of people were lining up outside the courthouse chanting "lock him up" about Roger Stone. I mean, they're not proving what they set out to prove. They set out to prove Russian collusion. They're not even in the ballpark of that. They're just trying to waste our time and demoralize people. It's just terrible. So, Tom, what happens next in this story?
Paul Manafort had another hearing last week. The special counsel, as I implied, is accusing him of lying about his cooperation. If there's a report to be issued, I think it's only going to be an interim report, and I kind of go back to the beginnings here. Is the special counsel is an abuse, should never have been appointed, is unconstitutional, needs to be reined in. I don't know why we're accepting the fact that he needs to write a report, and that ought to be the end-all and be-all. I think that the report needs to be severely curtailed or shut down in its entirety, because he has no business compiling another dossier on President Trump. We already have one on the Clinton dossier. We know how that was hackish and fake, and we don't need a Mueller dossier, and I don't trust him to do anything like that, nor is it appropriate for him to be doing anything like that, he and his team.
Tom, how can people help you out over at Judicial Watch?
They can go to our website at judicialwatch.org and support our work, and, of course, get the word out about our work via Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and such.
Yeah, there's really only a handful of folks that get anything done in Washington with any regularity. Tom Fitton's one of them. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate the time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.